So Corey Anton made a video, which was he was kind of giving the question, how big is the now? Talking about temporality in the phenomenology of Ibn Husserl and Martin Heidegger. He was also talking about the relation between psychology and ontology, and I think it was a really great video, actually. So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit. The now, I want to talk about like a phenomenology of the now in Husserl versus Heidegger. And I guess what Corey Anton was getting at in this psychology versus ontology thing is when we're talking about something like memory or something like that. As in Ibn Husserl's book, The Phenomenology of Internal Time Consciousness, he talks about consciousness of the passing of time and of the future of time, and the future time. The idea of a retention and the idea of a protension. Protension having to do with anticipation of coming times. And I kind of am thinking about that a little bit. I have been. And when someone hears Husserl kind of talks about the idea of hearing a melody, as to, how do we think about the now? How do we think about time as in hearing a melody? And if you hear one note at the other, the notes that you just heard, are they no longer there? Are they just gone? Or are they all in one? Is this all in one thing? Thus is the now this expanded thing. So what Corey Anton was talking about is the question is how psychology is really related to ontology. Is psychology, this pertains to psychology and as to how memory and imagination factor into oneself, and Heidegger's thought of temporality and the now itself kind of brings in ontology. But first I'll discuss Husserl. With Husserl, you have this stream of consciousness. You have this line, which he has this diagram, which I have drawn before and made videos about here on this channel. But he has this line, this main line, which is a stream of consciousness. And then forget what something happening in now, real time now, is a dot on that line. And as that thing passes, it descends and becomes a retention. And it can descend even further and become secondary remembrance, and almost like more like store away memory. So you have this line of consciousness where when one thing happens, it doesn't disappear after the time has passed. It descends and becomes a retention, something that just happened and is fresh in your mind. And as time goes by further, it descends even further and is a more distant thing, and becomes even more distant as time passes, but it never really gone. Furthermore, if one thing happens on that main line, you also have something which ascends up from that line and is a protension, which is anticipation of the future. So you have protensions and retentions. The main line is the present. Protensions are future. Retentions are past. And Husserl, in reading Husserl, I've argued before on this channel that he's sort of arguing that past and present are almost confined past and future are in a way confined in the present itself. So as for Husserl's answer as to how big is the now, and as to what the now is quite mostly an expanse, but the now includes all of the protensions, all of the retentions, because basically the protensions and retentions pertaining to what is happening now, the past and future are thus included in the present. That's a way that I argue that is what he's saying in a paper in before I left college. And that was a paper that I wrote. I wrote a paper including that argument for a philosophical writing seminar, and I still think that that's a good argument. I was mainly arguing about something about Derrida, but I did include that part. But I think if we're talking about Husserl's idea of the now, it's including the past and future, not everything that has ever happened in the past and not everything that will happen in the future. That is not all included in the now, but almost the things that will happen in the near future and the things that have happened in the somewhat close past are all included here. So in a way, for Husserl, it is quite an expanse, but it also is included in one thing. Now, for Heidegger, the now is also included, or the past and future are also in a way included in the now, or the present. But as Coriantum was saying, for Heidegger, memory or imagination or ontological features of the world or of existence itself, since Dasein and being in the world, are the ultimate ontological unit. Memory, imagination, things like that, or protension, or whatever you want to call it, when we're talking about Heidegger, it's a characteristic of oneself, and that thus it is a characteristic feature. It is an ontological feature of the world itself. That's Heidegger, and thus for Heidegger, you can experience the whole thing of a melody in one thing. So in a way, this is less about psychology. For Husserl also did not like the idea of psychology being included in philosophy, but I think for Heidegger, for Husserl, you still can't. For Husserl, you can't rule out the idea of thinking about this as psychological. But Heidegger takes things on a different level and makes it totally non-psychological. It brings it to a whole new ontological level. So for Heidegger, how big is the now, or what is the now for Heidegger? The now does include memory. It does include a lot of those things. So it's also similar for Heidegger, that the present and the past and the future are included in the present. It's not, as Coriantum was saying, it's not this razor thin thing. This is now and now is past. This razor thin piece of time, which is always passing and fleeting. It's a much more complicated, expansive thing as to what the now is, and I think this phenomenology of the now, I think is good to think about. Especially, I think Husserl and Heidegger both have their idea and can answer. They both have an answer to the question as to how big the now is. But they have a very similar answer, is that the past and the future are included in the now. But as for the psychology ontology relation, it's quite a bit different.